And my name is Tilo Bonow. I am the founder and CEO of Piabo, Europe's leading technology PR firm. And we are a great team of more than 40 consultants helping brands all over the world with PR, social media, content marketing, and key opinion leader programs. We produce stories, we produce media relations, we produce things from press release, speaking opportunities. We help our clients with all kind of relations with media, with influencers, with bloggers, all these stakeholders that are relevant for you. We're trying to establish great relationships that you get the reputation and the awareness that you deserve. We do this for amazing brands around the world. Many names are, I'm sure, familiar from Silicon Valley, from other great tech hubs like Huawei from China, Asana, Stripe, Silicon Valley Bank, Evernote. So you see a great mixture of brands, B2C, B2B, so whatever also your company is into and your target groups. I'm sure we have a great case that we can talk about and help you to find and craft a great story. The topic of storytelling that we are into today is particularly important, as is especially also in the B2B world is where the most founders and CEOs struggling with, because it is very hard to say in 1, 2, 3 sentences what your company is about, but often you don't have more time when you talk with a journalist, for example. And even a great venture capitalist like Ben Horowitz said the wonderful sentences, a company without a story is a company without a strategy. And you might ask yourself why one of the leading venture capitalists is so passionate about storytelling and finds us important. The reason is quite simple, because a great story and great reputation in the market can help in so many different ways. It can help with finding, attracting the right suppliers. It can help with employer branding. It can help with investor relations. It can help with shortened sales cycles. So there are many, many positive impacts when you are able to tell a great story in the media. And also when it comes to an M&A process, you want maybe to exit a company, you want to do a bigger fundraising. Also a lot of M&A consultancies using PR firms to position a company in the right media that can read by potential buyers, by potential investors. So in many sectors, it is considered as super important and relevant, and that's why we're talking about today. And also one of the greatest founders, Bill Gates from Microsoft, said, if I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it in public relations. And obviously, he knows maybe a recent study that came out that just 32% of the people believe in traditional advertising, that shows there is a huge potential for PR, for own media, and also the return on investment is tremendous. When we look at the numbers of our clients, clients that just purely focus on traditional marketing or TV spots, and the companies that also add a PR program and have great media coverage, obviously the conversion rates are much better and also the customer acquisition costs are much lower. So let's dive directly into it. What is, in the end of the day, storytelling, and why is it important to build a great brand? A great brand, a great story is the difference between being just a bottle of water or a brand like Evian. It is the difference between being just a cup of coffee for some cents or a high-priced premium brand like Starbucks. And it all starts usually with the hero's journey. And I'm sure you know this from all the tales from your childhood, maybe how this works, that there's always a hero, a kind of a call to adventure. In our world as startups, it is obviously the idea, the initial idea to say, I want to found a startup, I want to go on this journey. And alongside this road, there are obviously a lot of problems, struggling. Maybe you didn't hit a KPI, you didn't find the right investors, maybe there's some struggling in the team. So there are a lot of things alongside this hero's journey that are also not just the positive and the sunny side of life, but they all really make a story interesting because there are also some problems alongside the way. But in the end of the day, there's always then a great solution, a return, and then hopefully at the end of the day also the exit. And often the problem is when founders think about creating a great story, they like to talk about what is great and what kind of great vision they have and why it is so great what they're doing, the great technology. But they are not talking about what maybe is also in the industry critical, what are maybe problems alongside the way or challenges that they face. But obviously, this is what makes a story interesting. And so the problem is they want to talk about this, but not about the really interesting part, which is obviously also interesting then for journalists and other multipliers to have really the whole picture and the whole story. And what is very important is to think about the actual characters that we're talking about. So the story about the founder, the story about the team, the story about the actual customers. And I want to show you a very simple template, how you can feel free to take a picture from it. You can do it then for yourself, to go through it and find a way to really craft a great persona, a really great story. For example, let's take the goal that we're talking about, the customer. The situation, let's take a company like, let's say Salesforce, for example, or Pipedrive, one of the CRM tools. So you can really easily, when you follow these steps, find a story that you can tell for your customers. For example, it starts with the question, once upon a time. So you can say there was a young guy, entered the company, was very ambitious, with great skill sets for sales, and she always wanted to win the Fortune 100 companies for his firm, was very well skilled, comes from a great university, has the best advantages to do this. But always had a problem. What is the problem? The problem is he worked maybe with Post-its, he worked with an Excel sheet, things like that. And she tried to solve it with what are the old traditional solutions, maybe again an Excel sheet, maybe just a blank sheet of paper, maybe just writing it down and collecting emails. And then, but she wishes that comes, because that is how every story works, problem and solution. He wished there was a tool where he can see and track all the emails, where he build a sales funnel, things like that. Until one day, and now you can say, he came to the NOAH conference, saw the booth of Pipedrive, Salesforce, you name it, found this amazing solution. Unlike her solution, this obviously is the better way, because you can track all the emails, you can follow up, you can build a marketing solution. And her wish came true, to be always able to see the current status of a sales process, to see the recent emails that I exchanged, saw what other interactions colleagues had with this firm, etc. So you can see for all target groups that you have, is it the founder team, is it in this case, in my example, the customer, whatever it is, when you follow this very simple storyboard, you can very easily come to this point and find your unique communication point that you can build and craft a story around it. And another way to do it, and I suggest this also to prepare for interview situations, is a SWOT analysis, to be very clear about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats that obviously every company and every product has. And when you look how sometimes out of these complex process, you are able to craft a story in 1 or 2 sentences, it can really change a whole company and makes it very easy also at an event, or when you have just 30 seconds on the phone with an investor or with a journalist, to craft it down. And I just picked one example how Warby Parker does it on their website. They say, Warby Parker was founded with a rebellious spirit and lofty objective to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious business. So here are the 2 main aspects. On the one hand, the actual business, that they want to disrupt, in this case, the eyewear industry with a very competitive price. On the other way, doing something good, that for every pair of glass that they're selling, they're giving one for free to Africa, for example. Or a company like Stripe, they're very much about working with the developers together. Developers are their most important customers. They want to make the developers happy and give them the tools and the abilities that they need to build great products. So what they decided for was going with an own magazine, like in wired quality, so really, really a great magazine called The Increment, and published their own magazine to address the developers and build a great developer relations out of it. And also this is a way to attract the customer. Or Lyft, for example, a direct competitor with Uber, they said what Uber did with this brand positioning, very aggressive, very kind of unfriendly towards their drivers, etc. They chose a different approach. They made billboards where they addressed the drivers, but also the customers in the same way, and really gave them their appreciation via these super big billboards to show them that they have a different kind of culture, a different kind of style, and choose to tell their story in this way. Or when you go to the website from Airbnb, they decided that the customer, the people where you stay in the end of the day and where you spend your night, they are in the middle of their story. They are the heroes of their hero's journey. So they decided to produce with pictures, with video, great stories from people in London, in New York, in Berlin, Los Angeles, about their stories that they have to tell, because the heroes of Airbnb are the people who renting out their places. So this is the kind of storytelling that Airbnb chooses. And either as it's B2C or B2B, it's always a good idea to identify the problem clearly so that you can offer with your product a clear solution, because this is the most simplest way how a storytelling works, that there's a problem that you solve and that the story is then about the solution. And another example, company Everlane, and this brand, you can see they could really put it down in 9 words, that they are identified as a problem that a lot of people who buy clothes have a big problem that they not know how they get produced. You see H&M has a lot of problems with this kind of transparencies, that it's not clear where the money goes to. There's a lot of questions, and their ethical approach was clearly positioned on their website, and they made it very clear what their way to go is. And you might be familiar with this model of the golden circle that says you always should start when you think about a story and positioning with why. Why are you doing something? And then in a second way, think about how and at what. I would go one step further and say, when you would like to do it really authentic, then you have not just to start with why, you have also to start, do it more like a spiral with who. But because in the end of the day, it's in our world where we're talking about startups, about tech company, about investment firms, it's all about the actual people, the CEO, the founder. So if it's not authentic for him and he can't present it in a very authentic way, it's obviously a problem. So first of all, it's about the people. And often when you start a tech company, you have just a domain, nobody knows the brand, nobody knows the domain, you have a website. So the people that you have, the founding team, this is actually your biggest asset that you have. And I can encourage you to really think about, from your C-level, from your founding team, what kind of PR potential is in it. And so it is all about recognition, reputation, and obviously also respect in the industry. It has reasons why big successful brands like Apple, for example, very consistently, even down to their look and feel, how they present it on stage, how they present a story, what kind of words they use, on which kind of conferences they are present, are very, very strict. And a strong personal brand can really add value to a brand, because when you look at companies, either is it is Apple or Amazon or others, I mean, they're always, or Tesla, they're always great personalities that we all know, that we all admire in the media, that we all know, and where we also follow a story with. And a very simple psychological rule says, obviously, that people are interested in people, and that's why it's also a reason why it's a very, very important part in every PR strategy to work with the founder, to work with the CEO, and let them speak and give them the company's soul and a face. And one example for this is one founder also from Berlin, Jan Beckers, who is definitely someone who is very great in storytelling. On the other side, he knows also that it's very important for the employer branding, because he knows that when he really wants to attract the best people for his company, it is important that they know who they work for. And so this is something that he is really much about and why he is doing it. Another example, for example, the CEO from Groupon, Andrew Mason, he knew that even that Groupon is a B2C business, that the B2B world is very important for him, because if he has no supplier who give him the vouchers and give him the great deals that he can sell, it is nothing. So for him, he uses personal brand not so much for the B2C side of the business, but here in the way, as an example from the German version of Adweek, that he is able really to use his personality to attract brands that they work with his company. So also here, when it comes to personal branding, it is important to be a kind of purple cow and use your personality, the image from the founder, to do storytelling. And often when we talk with startups, what they think is a great story is definitely not great storytelling, because the process of founding a startup is obviously very emotional, but just having a startup is not a story per se. And often there are very big visions. We want to change the world, and we want to change the whole entire industry. But also this, I mean, every company has this, and often it's not so sharp to the point, or they're not able to tell the story that sharp that it's possible. And even if you have prominent investors, for example, in Berlin, a couple of years ago, Ashton Kutcher made his first investment in the Berlin startup. And obviously it was a big hello, and everyone was writing about, oh, now a Hollywood star is investing in startups. But then he invested a second time, and the media said, oh, okay, he's obviously interested in Berlin. And then he did it a third time, and nobody cares anymore, right? So there's a very short cycle. And for example, yesterday at the speaker's reception, I met a female founders couple and said, oh, we are two female founders. It must be a great story. Why is nobody writing about us? I said, yeah, but just being female and just being founder is not enough. And maybe it was a year ago enough where there are not so many role models, right? But in the last, when you look at the last 12, 24 months, there were a lot of startups with female founders and a lot of coverage about this topic. So just being female and a founder is not enough to generate coverage. Maybe in certain magazines, and there's certain exceptions, but that's not enough. And when you craft a story, it's very important to also see that there are certain stories that always attract also key emotions, like fear or frustration or a hope or an excitement, or also a desire to be the first one who covers a story. And when you craft it, you have to think obviously like a journalist, because a journalist is obviously the person that you want to reach out and want that he covers the story. And so it has to be very timely. It has to be very relevant and different. And often when we have certain situations, the founder doesn't understand why nobody covers him, we say, yeah, because it's a story, there is no urgency in it. So he can write today about it, he can write in 3 months about it, or in 1 year. It doesn't make a difference, right? So it's not timely. And it's also not different from any other products. There is a lack of a unique communication point, and it's also not relevant for the readers, because the journalist is not there to write for you. They are existing to write and help their readers. So one tool that I would like to show you that is very simple to use and doesn't require any big press release is the tool of news checking. You can do literally for free, but it has a great impact in the media. And what it actually means is that every story at one point has a starting point. So for example, some years ago, you all remember maybe there was this NSA scandal, right? The topic about email hacking and things like that. So imagine you are a security startup. You have a software that protects your email. So you could use this as an opportunity and position yourself, for example, with a quote or with an infographic or additional numbers that you have. So the idea behind the concept of news checking is that at one point there is news popping out because there's, for example, a political situation, or someone brings a study out, or someone has a very strong opinion, or there's a new debate, whatever it is. And you can position yourself as an expert with a statement, with a quote, with numbers, with an infographic, with a video, etc. Because this is what a journalist is looking for, right? If you read newspaper and you read an article, there's always a quote from an expert, right? That can be a startup founder, it can be whoever it is, right? The only question is, are you able to deliver something to them timely and different? And usually that works very well. I'll give you one example. As the Apple Watch was launched some years ago, here it is, we built two different stories for two totally different clients, one B2C, one B2B client. So we knew there was the Apple Watch coming out on one day. So we prepared two stories for the day where we know the major announcement from Apple will come, and all the media on the whole entire planet will write about, oh, Apple has announced the Apple Watch. So one story was with a company called Applause, which is a mobile analytics company. And we crafted a listicle and said, we give 10 tips when you build an app for the Apple Watch. It's obviously different than for the big phone, right? Because it's very small. There are different rules. So we positioned Applause as the thought leader in the space of the Apple Watch. And the other story was for our client Evernote. Evernote CEO talked about, is it maybe socially not so acceptable or unpolite to wear an Apple Watch because it blinks and beeps and maybe it's very distracting very much. So two totally different story. And when you Googled at this time how to, what are the best advices for programming, engineering an Apple Watch or Apple Watch expert, our client in Google and all these search engines always showed up because there was the only one at this time who had content about it. And same also for Evernote in this context about use cases. They're always been very much forward. So that was a very good example for being on time with a great part and taking a great part on the story. And obviously the right target media is relevant. For the story that I told you, the B2B story, obviously it was in mobile magazines. The Evernote story was more in the mainstream business media. And every story has a different target group, but every story can also build for different target groups. One example, we worked for an app where you can book your private jet. I'm sure everyone from you have experience with that. So this story, having a private jet app, there are so many stories in it. For example, one story was for a mobile business magazine. How do you build an app for such a high-priced product? Because it's obviously different when you book a flight for $5,000, let's say. You have to build a different app than, for example, for a consumer product, which is for free and has a totally different target group. Another story was for social media and infographic, where we collected all the data that they have and said, oh, what are the routes that people who hiring a private jet flying most, and what are the typical costs, and what are the typical people. Very interesting numbers out of there. Then we thought about a magazine like Forbes. We made a very shiny story with Rihanna, as Rihanna uses the private jets when he is doing a concert in Vienna to fly to Paris to do a shopping trip and things like that. So it was a more like a kind of colorful story. Or a business outlet, Bilanz, that where we used the story and the CEO to talking about, is this a new trend that you don't need a broker anymore? So this app is disrupting the whole private jet industry. Same company, same CEO, same situation, nothing changed but 5 different stories. And obviously also what you can do with data, which also doesn't cost you a lot of money, infographics also always a great idea. And when you think about how to distribute these kind of stories that you build, I can recommend you this kind of Mercedes star of communication. Because what often the mistake is that people heeding from one press release to another, right? When they think about PR, we get always the question, okay, how many press releases I get and how many journalists will reach out to? Both questions are totally irrelevant. What you should think is first about the storyline, and then see PR really as a holistic approach. Obviously, you can write a press release and send it out and do spray and pray, but this maybe is not so effective. Also, ask your question, how can you tell your stories in social media channels, like in 140 characters on Twitter, like in a more private environment in Facebook, more visual in Pinterest, or for example, in Instagram, right? So there are a lot of more options. And also when it comes to influencer relations, right? Key opinion leader. Who are your key opinion leaders? Who are people in the industry that will talk about you? Who are people in the industry, university professors, other influencers that have an impact and make an impact and a difference in your industry? Maybe people from industry organizations. They are all people that are highly relevant for you and important. At the end of the day, a story is only as good as the engagement in the end of the day is. And engaging stories, that are the stories that actually earn the money. And your job is that your story has to reach the hearts and minds of the audience. And I'll give you one example. There was a company in Munich, a fashion portal, that reached out and said, hey, we have a new fashion portal, you can buy fashion. I said, okay, should we send out a press release and say, we can buy fashion on it? Is that really news? Is this something cool and appealing? Maybe not. And they said, oh yeah, we want press, we need press, very important for us. I said, we have to think differently, but because just sending out and talking about a press release is maybe not enough. And we thought about what could be maybe also a creative approach. And the idea was here that we thought about what is actually the USP and what is really different. And it came up that it was the usability and the user experience. And how can you should call a journalist and say, oh, our user experience is so great. I mean, everyone can do it, it's also not very unique. So the idea was here to partner with a glove company called Röckl. It's a very famous glove company in Germany. They have gloves in every taste. And we wrote this press release and then sent it out to the journalists, so all the fashion journalists, fashion tech journalists, etc. And said, if you want to have the other glove, because there was only one in it, you have to go there and find it on the portal and order it. So what we had with this idea was that first of all, there was a conversion rate from over 90% because everyone wants the second glove. Second, that to try the website, to have the experience that is really better experience. And the other idea in the end of the day, that you have a situation where you have a very holistic, personal approach, and you can reach out to them and say, hey, were the gloves fitting? Was it a great experience for you? And the articles that they generated was amazing. So to summarize, the approach that we learned so far is, first of all, it's very important to start with a clear research, also look what are the competitors doing, not only to stalk them and to say, okay, we copy them, but really to see how can we fit in, how can we make a difference, how we can tell our story different. And then it's not only about the messaging, it's also about the creativity. So can we maybe support this message with a photo? Can we support the message with a video? How can we do this? Then producing hopefully engaging content. And then think about all channels, owned media, earned media, paid media, shared media. So all the media that you can leverage on are important. Obviously, at the end of the day, also the analytics, the KPIs in the end of the day. And you have to think outside of the box because on average, a journalist gets between 500 and 800 emails and pitches a day. So imagine you open your inbox and you have 500 emails, right? So there's literally no chance. And often people who are not so experienced sending out, for example, a press release and writing the subject line, press release. I mean, if you get 500 emails, you have not the time to click in every email. You have to be able to tell your story in the subject line that's so interesting that someone clicks on it and says, oh, that actually sounds interesting. And there are a lot of other mistakes you can alone make in the process of sending an email to someone. So this is definitely not something that is sustainable. And also to call them, right? I mean, you can imagine how many people try to call a journalist. This is maybe also not the best idea. So building relationships is really important, that they maybe also know where email is coming from, that you deliver it in a way that they can actually use. And also help them to write a better story and make it in a better way. For example, with pictures. I think that's very underestimated to use pictures, especially in B2B. To tell a story just writing a long text, nobody has actually time for it. But the journalist has also not time, it's also not her job to send you a photographer, and they have also not the money for it or the editorial capacities to do this. So finding a great way to visually tell your story is very important. So visual storytelling is one of the the key drivers. And you can visualize every story. So for example, this was a portal that we worked for. It was like eBay for renting, so you can rent everything on this portal. And you see, this was 4 lines that the journalist wrote, and this is the percentage that made the picture. Well, this was like a Facebook for your animals that you have at home, right? This was the article about of the portal. This is the emotional picture that supports the message. Or there was a speed dating portal online, right? You have a man, you have a woman, you have a laptop, you have a watch. Great visualization for speed dating. Also in TV, this TV station, use laptop, the stop watch, and the mouse form a heart. Nice visualization for speed dating, right? So, but also in B2B, if you're a security company, I mean, I think it's a great visualization for a security company, and it can help you to support the mention. And even if you are a company in mobile security, there would be also a picture for it, right? There's always a chance to do visual style. There's no excuse for it. When you imagine, it is not really expensive to hire a photographer or a graphic designer. Maybe $500 or so, right? It is not a question of money. It's a question of having the right idea and the right visualization. To give you some more tips, because it's always a question that I get after these speeches, is don't hire a PR agency until you can afford a good one. You can spend a lot of money on PR people and PR agencies, but it is really, really important to have a good one because you give your brand in their hands, right? It's about your reputation. And if you have someone who didn't understand your product, who didn't understand your industry, too junior people, agencies that have not experience in your specific industry, that is really a big problem. And better do it by yourself or wait, but please wait until you can really afford it. Another mistake is to rely on PR for everything. Often we have enquiries that said, oh yeah, we want to drive our sales and we need PR now, we need publicity. And I said, what else are you doing? Are you doing marketing? What are you doing? Going for events or what else? And putting everything in one bucket is definitely not good. And it's also problematic because you spend so many money, and obviously PR takes also some time. You have to build relationships. It doesn't go by a click of the button, right? And it's very, very important to have a diverse program, have different strategies, because then it is much more efficient. And obviously, also just hiring an intern, or sometimes we had also that the office assistant is responsible for PR and things like that. I mean, take it serious. And also in the interaction with the journalist, I often very emotional found. I said, oh, they should sign an NDA before I can't talk. I said, that is not what PR is about. Don't do this, you destroy the relationship immediately. Let me give you a little outlook where we see that PR in the next 24 months will develop in which direction. We see that employer branding becomes super important. Every company literally has a big problem with hiring the best talent. So employer branding has to be always part of a great PR strategy to attract the best talent for your company. Second, the combination of SEO and PR, because PR generates great content and great backlinks, so it's much more efficient to connect these two areas. Virtual reality to explain also complex products, not just only in travel, etc., where you can make virtual journeys. Also in B2B, it will have an impact. We see the first campaigns very impressively, and obviously also for journalists, a great way to learn more about the product and experience the product. And also that is influencer relations changes in a way. Right now it's often you pay here someone $500 and then they post a picture on Instagram, etc. But we see that more and more. It's like with journalists. It's long-lasting relationships. It's really making them to more like ambassadors for your company. So that's really something that is very, very powerful. And last but not least, that every area of your content has to work also obviously mobile. Often in conference rooms, a video infographic looks great on a big screen. And then you look at your iPhone or on your Apple Watch and they say, oh, it looks very different and it doesn't tell the story that it should. So be sure that your content also works mobile. So to sum it up, what we learned today, Be the media instead of pitch the media. So don't underestimate also the owned media channels. Find shared interests with your target audience and build a story that is focused on their problems and provide a great solution. And become a trusted source of expertise, because especially in personal branding, if you stand for a topic, if you stand for something, this is really important. And in the end of the day, with all the topics, whatever you choose or you say, I want to do it all, is important to stand out and find your differentiation. And then you will also create results that build business. And most importantly, form relationships and not one-night stands. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for your questions. Thank you.